This video will show you how to remove the stock front and rear suspension on all 2016 through 2023 Toyota Tacomas.
All right, so the first step in our uninstall, with your truck in the air supported, you're gonna remove that front wheel. Now, if you don't have a lift, a jack and jack stands will work fine as long as it's supported safely. Once you've done that, grab a set of needle nose pliers. We're gonna remove the cotter pin holding on that nut for our outer tie rod. So to get this cotter pin out, it helps to straighten the other side. Just go ahead and pinch those two pins straight. And once you've done that, grab the opening, use some leverage, and just pull it straight out. And now that your cotter pin is removed, you can get a socket on top of here. We're gonna use a 19mm. Go ahead and remove this nut. Now, if the ball joint is fully seated in this part of the knuckle, it's probably not gonna come out from just force down. What you may need to do here, suggest turning that a little bit to give yourself some more room. Rethread on this nut to protect your threads, and then we're just gonna strike this side right here with a hammer to release this ball joint. Once that is released, go ahead and remove that nut again and pull it out of the knuckle. Next up, we're gonna remove the sway bar end link from the knuckle. Now you need to remove this 17mm nut. You can do it with an impact, but if the end link starts to spin, you'll need a 17mm wrench and a 6mm Allen key to hold that end link steady so you can break it loose. Then once your nut is removed, go ahead and remove the end link from the knuckle. Next up, we're gonna be removing this bolt that holds on your brake line bracket, just to give us a little extra slack when we drop our knuckle down. Grab a 12mm socket and get this bolt removed. Remove the bracket out of the knuckle. Next up, we can also remove this second bracket that holds the brake line to the frame, just to give us a little bit more room here. We're using a 12mm wrench just because this line's a little bit in the way. You can use a socket with a swivel as well. And make sure you remove the brake line out of this hole as well. There is a second ABS line that is attached to your upper control arm. What you want to do here is grab a 10mm socket and remove this bolt so that you can remove this bracket as well. Next up, we'll be removing this pin holding on the nut for your upper ball joint. And on the far side, this might be a little bit hard to see, but there is a tab that you need to release. And once you've released the back part of this clip, grab a needle nose pliers and just pull it straight out. Now you can see the hook part that we had to release right here. It goes around the edge of the nut. Once you remove that, we can remove the nut. Now that we have that pin removed, we can grab a 19mm socket with a swivel extension and remove this nut. We're actually gonna leave it on just slightly because we will need to hit this part of the knuckle to release it. You'll wanna strike right on the side of the knuckle in order to release this ball joint. Now with a pry bar, we can pry down on that upper control arm to give ourselves a little bit of slack. Remove the nut. And then release the upper control arm out of the knuckle. Now we can fully release the knuckle from the upper control arm, but since we have it hanging off to the side here, what we're gonna do is just have a bungee cord support this for now so that we don't damage the axle, which is still attached. We don't need it to fully support, but as long as we're just taking a little bit of the weight off of it, that will be better. Next up, we're gonna be removing the 3 nuts that hold on the top of the strut. Grab a 14mm socket, or we're using a ratcheting wrench here, and get these removed. You can leave one threaded on slightly just to hold that in place. Continue on to remove the rest of them. This one in the back is probably going to be hard to see, but the same process, using your socket or wrench, go ahead and remove it. Now for the bottom of the strut, you'll need a 19mm wrench. And a 19mm socket, and get this nut removed. Now to remove this bolt, right now there's a bit of tension on it from the lower control arm and the strut. Now if you lift up on the lower control arm, you should be able to wiggle it free, and if you don't have a second set of hands, you can grab a rubber mallet and tap it out. In order to make it easier to drop our strut, we are gonna lower the sway bar. This step is optional. If you can wiggle that strut out with the sway bar in place, feel free, but this does make it a lot easier. There's 4 12mm bolts holding on this cover. Once that's removed, we can drop the sway bar down and out of the way. Grab a 12mm socket, go ahead and remove all 4 of these bolts. Next up, remove the other 12mm bolts. This one is at the back. Now we're moving on to the front 2 bolts on your skid plate. These are a little bit harder to get to. You can remove this plastic trim piece, or you can just grab an extension and pull it back slightly. Once you're on it, go ahead and remove that with a 12mm socket. Repeat that with your other bolt at the front of the skid plate. Make sure you're supporting this, as this is the last bolt holding it in. Now with all the bolts removed, you can remove this skid plate by pushing it slightly forward. That will unhook the front. Once it's unhooked on both sides, you can bring it down. Now that we have our skid plate removed, we can remove these 2 14mm bolts on each side that hold on the sway bar bracket. Grab a 14mm bolt and get these removed. Now make sure you have something supporting this so you don't let it fall straight down. And now that we have the sway bar mount disconnected on this side, make sure you repeat those steps to disconnect the end link as well as the mount on the opposite side. And once the sway bar is completely disconnected, you can go ahead and slide it out of the way. Now there are 2 brackets there, so it won't come off the truck unless you remove those. But as long as you push this out of the way, we can now remove the strut assembly. We're removing that nut that we had placed on top just to hold it in place. Then we can bring it out and down and remove it off the truck. Now that we have the strut assembly removed, we can remove the control arm by removing that bolt up top. Now to give ourselves a little bit more room, we're gonna remove these 2 covers. So grab a pop clip removal tool and let's get these off. With your pop clip, just go behind the cover and just go ahead and pop those out. Should be 5 on this back cover here. And these may break when coming out, so you may want to grab a few spares if you're not sure. But go ahead and remove this cover. Now you can repeat that on the other side. Again, we're just removing these so that we have a little bit more room to work with when we're removing that top bolt out of your upper control arm. Same process, get behind the piece and twist to remove these pop clips. Now, to remove this large bolt in your upper control arm, what you need to do is grab a 19mm socket and a 19mm wrench and remove the nut on this side. Now, to remove this long bolt through the upper control arm, it is a little tricky. Now, the factory service manual does say to cut this bolt, but you will need to reuse this for your new kit. So to get this bolt out in one piece, you may have noticed there's a couple pry marks on this part of our pinch weld. What we're gonna do is pry back on this part of the pinch weld and start to push the bolt up and past it. Make sure you leave the washer where it is, because the washer will hang you up. And slowly work your bolt out past that part of the frame. As long as you have clearance on the head of the bolt, you may want to go into the engine bay and check. Another method you can use is grab an extension, a longer one, and go ahead and tap that through with a mallet. This will help you to get the bolt slid through. Again, you want to leave that washer where it is and work your bolt out the front. Now we're in the engine bay and you can see the bolt here is almost all the way extended. We're gonna push it to the side and pull it out the rest of the way by hand. Once you do pull that bolt out, your washer is probably going to fall. Once you've done that, go ahead and wiggle the control arm loose and remove it off of your truck. All right, now we're moving on to the rear uninstall. We have our truck in the air and supported with pole jacks. Now, if you don't have a lift, you can use a jack and jack stands as well, as long as you're supporting that rear axle, so we can drop it down and install the shocks and rear lift blocks. First step, you're gonna grab a 17mm socket and wrench, and let's remove the bolt on the bottom of our shock. Now with your 17mm socket and 17mm wrench, go ahead and get this nut removed off your bolt. Now you can wiggle and remove this bolt out of the shock. All right, so now we're gonna get the top part of the shock unbolted. There's a nut up top here that attaches it to the threaded body. Now there is a slotted spot you can hold with a small wrench up top here, and then with a 14mm wrench, remove this nut. However, I believe this gets in the way and we can't seem to get this nut off with a wrench up top here. So an alternative, not the best way to do it, but it'll definitely get the job done, is to hold this bottom part with a pair of vice grips. And with your 14mm wrench, go ahead and remove that. Now you can remove the nut up top as well as the bushing and the washer, and then remove the shock off of your truck. Now we're gonna remove the U-bolts off of our truck. Make sure your axle is supported so it doesn't drop down when we remove the nuts on the bottom of the U-bolts here. Grab a 19mm socket and let's get these removed. Now you can remove the bracket and set it aside, and remove both of the U-bolts over the top of your leaf spring. Make sure the bump stop stays on top of the leaf spring.
Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Tacoma, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.